So we are now live. So hello, everyone. My name is Katherine Tepper. I am the Digital and Data Initiatives Librarian here at the Kapasi Library here at Medical College. Welcome to our PubMed search class. Okay, so hopefully by the end of today's session, you will be able to describe the components that make up PubMed and sort of how it's made up a little bit, understand how the parts that make up PubMed a little bit better, um, conduct a basic concept search for your research question in PubMed, and explain what mesh terms are and how to locate them. Okay, so what is PubMed? It's the thing we know it's where we're supposed to go. It's this huge database of papers, but really it's made up of three separate parts. It's a free database. It's maintained by the United States government. Um, it is filled with biomedical and public health research articles. And those three components that make it up are uh, Medline, PubMed Central, and NCBI Bookshelf. And so we're going to go into each of these just a little bit so you can understand what they are and why those things end up in PubMed. And that'll help you sort of understand the results that you see when you're doing searches. So we'll start with NCBI Bookshelf because it's the smallest part of PubMed. You may not ever come across this resources in this in your searching. Um, and so, it's the smallest. It's not as important, but it is essentially a bookshelf of ebooks or an archive of ebooks and reports that are submitted for inclusion. Many of those come from U.S. government agencies, and they're sort of kept by the National Library of Medicine uh, in the NCBI bookshelf. And then there's also private books that are given to the bookshelf by publishers or authors for inclusion. And so, again, these have to be related to biology, health information. Sorry, one second. I have to remove a cat. Okay, he loves to be on Zoom. Um, all right. And then the other thing to know is that the way the records work in PubMed for these, because we're talking about books in a lot of cases, is that you're actually going to be pointed towards a chapter. So the little record information you'll see when you search on PubMed will point you to a chapter of a book, or if in the cases of reports, just to the report or document. Okay. The next thing we'll talk about is the biggest part of PubMed. And so when you think about PubMed, most of what you're thinking about is actually Medline. And you may have heard of Medline before and kind of think of it as a separate thing, but it really is, it's all in PubMed. You never have to search Medline and PubMed because it's the big circle that overlaps with itself. Um, so it's a massive collection of citations, um, over 31 million of them. It is updated every day of the week from thousands of journals. And all of these citations come along with medical subjects headings or mesh terms, which we will talk about a bit more later on in the presentation today. But the important thing to note is that we are just talking about the references. And so we're talking like the journals are what we call indexed to Medline. And so not every single journal in the whole world is indexed to Medline. They have a criteria that you have to meet to be added. That criteria is really just, is this about health, biology, or some sort of related field? It does not actually speak to the quality. You still do need to critically appraise the stuff that you find in PubMed. But you know, the indexing means that they just take the citation information from each issue of a journal and pull that out. So your title, author, date, abstract if it's available, and other sort of important reference information is pulled out. It's not the full text of articles. articles. It's just the citation or reference of each article. And then finally, the second largest piece of PubMed is PubMed Central. And now we're talking about full text archive of articles. This has been growing. Is the I think newest part of PubMed since like the early 2000s, and it is full text. So the actual full articles. Thousands of journals have what are called deposit agreements. So a journal agrees to deposit all of the articles or some of the articles from all of their issues into PubMed Central at some point in time. Um, Authors can also submit their own preprints or author manuscripts. We'll just quickly explain what those are. Preprints are not peer reviewed. Um, so they are prior to that peer review process being submitted. They haven't been reviewed by the journal editors and reviewers. And author manuscripts have been peer reviewed. So they've been accepted and peer reviewed articles to a journal. And so, excuse me, in the case of something with like an NIH funding or other funding requirement, which requires the full text of the article from that funding grant to be published. If it's not published in something that's already open access, an author manuscript deposited into PubMed Central can fulfill that requirement. And so that's another way that full text shows up in PubMed Central. And so it's just important to notice when you are looking at things that are full text in PubMed Central, whether they're preprint or author manuscripts, it will sort of indicate, or if it just sort of has the banner of the actual publication, it's coming from the journal. And so again, that's just a little note that while PubMed is one of our most well-known and respected places, there are things that are not peer-reviewed in there. There are things that are not necessarily always the best science. So you do need to watch out for what you're looking at and critically appraise it always as you would anything. And then finally, journal deposit agreements vary very widely. So some things are immediately deposited the whole issue. So the Journal of, let's say, Case Reports of Pediatrics is published. The month comes out, they have an immediate deposit agreement, which means all of the articles from that issue of that month are uploaded in that month to PubMed Central. And then if you look at another pediatric journal, Journal of Pediatric Psychology, they have a different agreement, which is only NIH funded articles, and only after 1 year of publication will they be deposited into PubMed Central. So like I said, and everything in between, huge spectrum. But it is great that you do get some full text in PubMed. Okay, so now that we have some of the background of what PubMed is made up of, we could go down a whole rabbit hole. It could be a whole separate talk about scholarly publishing that, we do put those on sometimes. Our colleague Jeanette at the librarian is the expertise in that. So look out for those. We're going to talk about how to best search in PubMed and, really get the results that you want to get. Okay, so first, before we talk about examples, we're going to talk about how search actually works for a minute. We're going to get a little technical. So when we are searching on a search engine like Google, Bing, DuckDuckGo, etc., kind of searching that we're doing is semantic searching. This is obviously even going further with AI now, but basically we are using our own natural, partially complete sentences, partial or complete sentences as we would speak as our search queries. We're not using subject headings or keywords. We're just sort of putting in our sentences, or again, partial sentences to get results. And that's how those algorithms are set up to pull results. Um, when we are searching a database like PubMed or honestly any other biomedical or academic database, um, we are going to want to use Boolean searching. It's searching based on logic, keywords, subject headings. Um, we want to remove that natural language out because it's going to mess up our results. And so that's sort of the main difference. And you have to sort of train yourself to do your searching on the internet in a different way than you do your searching on databases. Okay, so if we just throw our whole sentence, as I was saying, say we have this research question about suspected appendicitis in children and the best way to diagnose it with imaging, and we put our whole beautiful PICO question into PubMed, we are going to get zero results. Um, Sometimes you will get some results, uh, but the the issue comes in with having all of these extra words in the search, right? Um, so this is what PubMed in the background, in a simplified way, simplified it because I would take up 2 pages. A simplified way translates that question into. Instead of in children with suspected appendicitis, does ultrasound versus CT provide better diagnosis and outcomes? It's running child and suspected and appendicitis and ultrasound and versus and CT and provide and better and diagnose and outcomes. It's going to ignore the words in, with, and, but that's it. And that's the main difference between the way these search algorithms work, right? The word it's taking all of your words and searching for them. So we really need to think very carefully about what words we are putting into that search box. Um, the main words that are tripping us up right here are better, provide, and versus, because it is looking for abstracts where all 3 of those words, plus the appendicitis and the child and all of the other things, are present. And that's just none of them, because just the odds that someone would write all of those words in the same abstract are just so small. Okay, so before we work on improving that search, we're going to review Boolean operators. And so, as I said before, we're building Boolean searches, which is just a fancy way of saying like a logic-based keyword search. And so the Boolean operators are and, or not. And not, we use very sparingly. I only mention it just because it is one of them. You really don't want to use it all that often. But the key things to remember are that and gives you fewer results and ors give you more results. So the more ors you have, the more results you're going to get. The more ands you have, the fewer results you're going to get. And if we think back to that example that I just showed you, it had a lot of ands in it, and we were getting no results, right? The way that PubMed translated it in the background. And I like to sort of visually think about this and kind of explain this in Venn diagrams, right? So every idea that we have from our search, each concept from our search, children, appendicitis, ultrasound, is a circle in the Venn diagram, and we're laying them over top of each other to get that slice in the middle of results that correlate to all of those things. Yeah, sure. I just got a chat if we could share the slides. And this is also being recorded, and we'll post the recording on the website, on the library website. So yeah, no problem. And feel free to put questions in the chat anytime. Whoops. Okay. So how are we going to actually break out all of these concepts and do this Venn diagram of a search? What I like to do is I like to make a table. So I'll have my question above, and I break out my table with concepts, keywords, and subject headings. We will get to the subject headings in a minute. But as you can see, I've identified 4 key concepts in this search. I really want children. I really want suspected appendicitis. Should have chosen an easier thing to say. Ultrasound and CT scan, right? Those four things have to be there, right? Uh, to be what I want for my search. And so then we brainstorm different ways to say those things without any of those fluff words. No versus, no better, um, no provide, no in, and etc. And so everything in each row of our column is combined with or. Every column then gets combined with and. And so let's see what that looks like. Okay, so I took out the subject headings for just a second, because again, we'll get to that, just so we have room to sort of see what we're talking about. And so we have, again, visually our four concepts. Each one of those circles represents children, appendicitis, ultrasound, CT scan separately. And we're looking for that overlap of all of them. And so the way to take sort of the metaphor of the circles forward is we're going to put each of them in parentheses. So all of our words about children are going in parentheses with ors in the middle. Then we have an and, then all of our words about appendicitis inside parentheses, then we have an and, ultrasound, et cetera, et cetera. And so you don't have to structure your searches with, on each line like this, but it is kind of helpful to see everything. And also it helps fit on the slide. But I do actually often write searches this way with big spaces in between to help sort of visualize and see better and make sure I'm not accidentally putting children and appendicitis together in the same parentheses when building out the search. Okay, so our first search had no results. Now we have this search, just keywords, and not that many of them. And we are going to sort of just throw this in and see what we'll get now. And it's 188, so much better than 0. And so that is, again, much better than 0. And again, the more ors that you have in here, the more results you're going to get. So, if there are other ways to say CT scan or ultrasound that are relevant to what you're looking for, you can add those and it will increase to an extent the number that you get. Okay, so we've been putting it off, but now we're going to talk about subject headings. So, medical subject headings are what they're officially called, and that gets shortened to MESH. These are specific to PubMed, though many databases use similar types of subject headings. The reason that we use subject headings is because the way humans communicate is messy, even in scientific and academic works. One author might write one thing one way, and the other is going to write it in a use completely different words to express the same topic. And some journals require very specific structures to their abstracts. There's always word limits to abstracts, which restricts what we can say and how we can say things. And then, of course, there are abstracts that are not even included in PubMed, and you only have the title to go by. And then, of course, we have British spelling versus American English spelling. All of these different things combine to make finding things more challenging with just natural language. And so subject headings aim to collect everything that's about the same subject or topic using a controlled language. And so this means that the same mesh term is applied and formatted exactly the same way for all articles on that topic, regardless of what terms are used in the abstract. And so I have taken screenshots here of one of the articles related to our search and the mesh terms that are related to that article. You can find mesh terms in PubMed. When you look at the individual article abstract, on the right-hand side, there will be this page navigation, and you can see mesh terms there. You click on it, it will bring you down to the bottom of the article where they will all be listed. Um, it's important to note that these are only going to come through on articles that are indexed to Medline, which again is most of them, but not everything in PubMed will have a subject heading. Um, and also, there's usually a delay with brand new stuff too. So there's, you know, most things have them, not everything has them, but they are very helpful and powerful for your search. And so, a very good example of what I'm talking about, the messy sort of language that the subject headings help to control, is in this example, the emergency service, comma, hospital. Obviously, no one is writing it that way in an actual abstract. But if we think about it, there are so many ways an author might write about where this diagnostic test is happening. It could be emergency service, it could be emergency room, ER, emergency department, ED, emergency unit, et cetera, et cetera. They may not even mention it, but it's implied in other ways, right? So um, that emergency service, comma, hospital collects all of those different variations in the way we've described emergency services and departments and rooms around the world into that one term. And everything that talks about basically an emergency room in a hospital will have that tag. Um, so hopefully that helps you understand sort of why mesh terms can be so powerful. Okay, so I went ahead and pulled all of the mesh terms for our concepts so that we can add those to the search. And so as you can see, we've got mesh terms with the very specific formatting, and you have to have that formatting. It has to be tomography, comma, X-ray computed with the quotes and the brackets that say mesh. Otherwise, it just won't work. Essentially, the brackets with the mesh are telling PubMed, search just that mesh section of all of the metadata of the articles, all of the records of the article for these terms. So if the term is not correct, it's not going to find any results in that mesh data. And so the best way that I use to do this, and I can demonstrate this later during question and answer if you like, is to find the example, like I showed you on the previous slide, of the mesh term that I want. And you may have noticed those were all hyperlinked. If you click on them, it brings you to sort of a background database behind PubMed where you can copy and paste out the specific formatting exactly as it's supposed to be. It avoids all sorts of issues with typos as well. And so that's my recommendation for making sure you get those correct. Because again, it's not going to break your search if you have the wrong thing. If you write, X-ray computed tomography instead of tomography, comma, X-ray computed, it just won't give you those mesh terms in your result. Like it won't return any extra articles for that mesh term. And you cannot just put the bracket mesh on the wrong word. You cannot just make it up, unfortunately. They have to be existing mesh terms that are, approved by the National Library of Medicine. Everything does not have necessarily a mesh term. Most concepts will, or at least have something kind of close that you could consider using. But there are always odd things, new things that don't have mesh terms. And so if you try and force it in there, again, you're just not going to get any benefit to your search for it. And lastly, don't ask an AI bot to give you mesh terms. They will get them completely wrong. You have to go to the source for those for real. You don't want hallucinated mesh terms. They're no good. Okay, so that's the deal with mesh terms. They are oh, whoops, I hit the thing for it. Anyway, so now you can see that was going to be a surprise. How much do we get extra with the added mesh terms? And it's 718. So that's a big jump from 188. Um, I have my theories as to why. It's probably guessing it's the appendicitis mesh term that's boosting us up um, because suspected appendicitis is maybe a little bit more narrow. Um, but I have not actually tested that. Um, just a hunch. And so now we have a nice, good chunk of results, an even bigger chunk. And of course, you know, the age-old question is like, how many results am I supposed to have? How many can I actually go through? And that's sort of a different question. And it really goes back to what is your purpose in searching, right? Um, are you just trying to get some background for a topic that you're interested in pursuing? Are you doing a full-blown systematic review? Those are going to be very different searches, right? In the case of the former, you don't need to necessarily go crazy with mesh terms and have a huge number of results because you're really just looking for background information to read a couple of articles and learn some more. Um, Whereas with a full systematic review, I would expect an even bigger search than this with, even more terms in there, more ors, to really capture absolutely as much as possible to be the most scientific, for the screening process and all that. That's a separate topic for another class. But um, essentially, that's really going to vary how intense you go with your searches. Um, but hopefully this has helped you sort of see the process as it builds out, from question to concepts, keywords to subject headings. And again, we're just about wrapped up, so we can take questions and I can do some live demonstration, which is a little bit more um, helpful to actually see PubMed in action with how to get the mesh terms and stuff. So again, hopefully this was all very helpful. And if you have any questions, please put them in chat or unmute yourself, and we can go from there. This QR code will let you schedule an appointment with a librarian. If you have a specific search that's really stumping you, we love to help with those. Meet one-on-one on Zoom to dive into your topic and really, figure out what's causing the issues with your search. Or just talk through your research ideas generally. So any questions? Oh, there's a chat. Yay. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Karen. Oh, good. I'm very glad it was helpful. Again, if you want to see me find those, would that be helpful right now for me to go onto PubMed and show you the how to find the mesh terms in a live situation? It's always a little challenging with the slides. Yeah. Okay, cool. Let me just stop my share for a second, and then I will pull up PubMed and stop my presentation. Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So here we are at the library website, not at PubMed. Uh, just as a quick reminder that you always want to start on the library website and click over to PubMed from there, because that is how you get that full text button for the stuff that's not in PMC. PMC has got a bunch of stuff, a bunch of free, free full text, but not everything, as we've discussed, is in PubMed for free, full text. And so by clicking over here, we're going to uh, get the red button, which will help us get the full text. Okay. So I'm actually gonna just pull this up real quick and grab my search. and then we can show you how to find the mushrooms. And so this is the way I usually do it. Is I start searching and then I click in to things that look good. Um, right? Let's look at this one and then find the mesh terms from there. So clicking into the article. Oh, my internet's going to be nice and slow. There we go. So the red button that I was talking about, that's this right here. That will give you the full text if we have it, or let you automatically submit interlibrary loan so you can get a PDF in your email um, right there. Because this is not a PMC, it's not full text for free. That red button, that's what you want. That's why you always go to the library first. Okay, and so as you can see on the right-hand side, we have that mesh terms link. If I click that, it automatically drops me down and I can see those mesh terms. And now if we select one, actually, we'll do that one because it's such a funky one. They really sometimes like to throw a lot of commas in there on you in the mesh terms. And so I've just clicked on this. It's regular click. It gives you the drop-down menu. And then I'm going to right-click Search in Mesh to open it in a new tab. And now this is that background database that I was talking about. This is essentially a second database that is behind, that is just a database of these terms um, for PubMed. So if it is not in here, it is not a mesh term. And so if I hit this Add to Search Builder button, I can now copy and paste from here the mesh term, or you can copy and paste the top and then put the quotes in the bracket on yourself, whatever works for you. I find the Add to Search Builder copy and paste is the way I go the most. You can also search directly from PubMed back here if you want to. Um, I don't know why you would want to look at everything that's tagged with one thing, but they do provide that feature. Um, maybe it's a rare, narrow thing. Okay, so that was how to find the mesh terms and do that copy and paste like I was describing. Um, is there anything else we would like to look at with PubMed? Oh, if you are interested in just starting from scratch looking for mesh terms, you can do that if you're on the homepage of PubMed. You can jump right to that database. It's right down at the bottom, mesh database. And if you're ever curious about, you know, what is included in PubMed, you can find the full list of all of the journals that are included um, in there uh, under the Explore icon. So yeah, if we click there, then you can just search. Whoops, I didn't need to hit advance. Search for terms. Um, so, right, if you want to search and see if quality of life is a term, we just type in there quality of life and it pops up. Uh, if it is something super specific that is not in there. Yeah. Anyway, if you search for something and it doesn't, and it will just give you no results if it doesn't exist in PubMed in the mesh database. Um, Looking at this as well, just extra information. The way that mesh terms work is in a tree or a hierarchy. And so you can see where a term lives in that tree. They're sort of all connected together. Um, and so you can see sort of quality of life has a more specific term underneath it, psychological well-being, being more specific than quality of life. Whereas social sciences is way broader than quality of life. And if you are searching a mesh term and it has lots of things underneath it, like procedures, surgical procedures operative, which I was doing the other day, it has many, 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 many things underneath it. Uh, Basically, all of the surgical procedures are underneath it. Um, you'll run into things like this with like cancers as well. Like all of the cancer is underneath here, and so it's it's helpful to know that when you are using broader ones, you are getting everything that's below it. Um, and so if there is something more specific that you are looking for, if you're not looking for all surgical procedures, but really just, you know, ambulatory surgical procedures, you want to use the more narrow term, right? Because you'll get way more results with surgical procedures than ambulatory surgical procedures. All right. Do we have any other questions? Anything else we want to experiment with and see sort of live in PubMed? Anything? Yeah. Does anyone have a specific topic that they would like uh, me to build out a little search on? Uh, One that's been particularly stumping you? That's okay. Uh, oh, different mechanisms. Meaning like the, because I'm not a clinician, different mechanisms for multiple myeloma, meaning like, is that by mechanisms, do we mean like how it works in the, like, how it appears in the body or like how you get it?
I think I mean like how it leads to multiple myeloma, just because I was stumped on how like different different mechanistic pathways leads to multiple myeloma.
Okay, okay. Could you give me an example of like one of those mechanisms?
Ooh, okay, let me see. Could be. Mm, Okay, so um like different signaling pathways, like the MAPK pathway.
Okay, okay. Um, that seems like
I think it's more biochem than
okay. That's okay. That's totally fine. Uh, just so you said map K, like map MAP,
yes.
and is that like hyphenated or is that one word with the K?
I think it's one word with a K.
Okay, so like this, like map K. Oh yeah,
Yes.
it's popping up. Okay, so map K and Loma. Uh, so essentially, basically, like what's been stumping is you how to like search for all of these different mechanisms at the same time.
Yeah, because I've been trying to see, because I've been finding like different drugs that leads to the
Okay, and like you
treatment.
said, signaling pathways too.
Yeah.
Okay, so pathways, right? So like doing this I usually do this in not in PubMed. I don't like to usually do that. I like to do it in a Word document, but um, we're I'm sort of trying to build out, right, from very small to bigger. Um, right, so signaling pathways or MAPK. Um, and let's see what else we've got. And so you're really just looking at like you don't want the drugs, you want to like look at the actual like chemistry that's going like the body chemistry that's going on.
Yes.
Okay. MAPK has okay, it's an acronym for mitogen activated protein kinase. Kinase. Say that. Is that right?
I believe that's it.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so we can add that too. I mean, that's sort of how I would go forward with that. Ooh, that's going to be a tricky one to spell. Nitrogen, let's tell you, nitrogen activated protein kinase. Um, and I mean, I recognize your name. I remember we did a consultation about your topic um, a while back when you were just starting out. Uh, and so I would say, first of all, hi, thanks for coming. And also, uh, you may have to do multiple searches, right? For those different paths, right? To sort of really narrow in on the different mechanisms, if there, are lots of them. You may not find just one search is helpful for that. Um, and so I know you're doing a big literature review. So that's probably going to just be the reality of that. Unfortunately, just lots of searches. Um, oh, thank you for the mesh term, Caroline. Signal transduction. Uh, EKR is coming up with another one. Okay, so yeah, I'm just um, it's going to be a lot of sort of searching and digging for those the names of those different pathways, right? And the variations on them, right? The MAPK acronym versus the fully spelled out mitogen activated protein kinase. Kinase. Right. And digging into those. And then, because you're really trying to get at the science, really focusing your attention on specific journals, right? You're looking for like the biochemistry journals, right? You see the second result is the Journal of Biochemistry, um, as opposed to some of the journals that are going to be more like cancer focused and like treatment focused. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot more sense. Thank
Yeah, so
you.
like just as you scan through, like try and pay attention. You'll as of course too, like this is a literature search you're doing, it's a big long project. You will start to see some of the same journals pop up too that will indicate to you like that they are um, more of those like harder science, like actual biochemistry, chemistry type things. Um, and so I would just start paying attention to what journal things are in. Um, right, like the cancer letters is probably not as important to you or not as relevant to what you're actually looking for as opposed to some of those other like like molecular science ones and biochemistry ones. But great, thank you for letting us go into your topic a little bit. Does anybody have another thing that's stumping them that encouraged them to come to this today and they want to ask about, or just a common issue you have with searching on PubMed that I didn't cover um, in some way. Okay, well, that's all right. I am going to pull up one more time this slide so that you all can see my email down there in the bottom corner, as well as that QR code to make an appointment if you really want to discuss a search more privately and talk to us about your research ideas, search that you're stuck on, whatever it may be. Oops, and I didn't change the year on that. Okay. But if there's no other questions, we will let you go now. And thank you all for coming.